Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Gems podcast. You know by now, and if you don't, my name's Michael. And in this show, we give out daily tips, tricks, strategies to increase your mindset, your belief system, and just get new confidence to walk in life. I believe as a business owner and entrepreneur, sometimes you just need an encouraging word and you just need a new perspective. And that's what we're talking about today is perspective. That was a pretty good segue, wasn't it? I'm proud of myself. But today we're going to talk about perspective and the importance of perspective. And I truly feel like as an entrepreneur, we need perspective really more than anything else, right? And you need a lot of things as a business owner and entrepreneur, but I really feel like you need perspective. Number one, you need perspective for the high times, the times when you're on the mountaintop. And sometimes I think you need perspective to stay humble. You need perspective to remember where you came from, remember your roots, and remember to be grateful for where you came up from. But on the flip side, I feel like you need perspective for the low times as well. You need perspective for when you're dealing with the crappiest of situations. You're dealing with, the hurt, the pain of business that we all experience. And you need perspective to remember that there's people in the world that probably have it worse than you. And I'm not going to say probably, but they do have it worse than you. And then you're actually in a blessed position. And so today I want to dive into it. And, growing up in my life, I was very blessed to grow up in situations that allowed me to keep my perspective broad. And I'll say it that way. Growing up, my family, we actually was very involved with a children's ministry that was a children's home. And so my grandfather, my grandmother, they operated a children's home where a lot of kids were coming from out of the country or even in the States that had a lot of mental disabilities, or even just not mental disabilities, but physical disabilities. So growing up, I was able to gain a perspective that a lot of people weren't able to pick up as children and as teenagers, getting to see people with no hands play basketball, seeing, people with no legs ride skateboards, like new perspective that you can live life, right? You can live life to the fullest. You just have to take the deck of cards that you've been dealt and play them the way you can. And so, not only through elementary school and high school was I able to experience that, but as I got, a little older into college, we took a lot of trips overseas, and we've had the chance to travel to Cuba and Guatemala and Africa and all these different places. And ultimately, when you go to third world countries, that's a whole different perspective, which that's something I would definitely recommend anybody to do, is just go outside of your comfort zone, go outside the country to experience how other people live. But, and this was a quote that kind of sparked this conversation, this thought in my mind, was a quote by Stephen Furtick. And he said, your perspective will either become your prison or your passport. And I heard this and I read this just on social media. So I'm going to be honest, I don't know the full context to this when Stephen said this, but in my brain, I perceive this as your perspective will either become your prison, as in it'll only keep you limited, or your passport, as in it'll give you the freedom to live life. And so there's some of you all here, you need new perspective. Maybe you're in the valleys like I was talking about, and you need to back up a little bit, and you need new perspective to give you hope and to give you encouragement. Where on the flip side, there's some of you all, you need, you need the perspective to, see the possibilities out there from the mountaintop, and just to remember the roots of where you've been. And so there's a few things I wanted just to talk about whenever it comes to perspective, things you can do to gain the right perspective, right? And one last thing before I go into these steps and things you can do to gain the right perspective, going back to the prison and your passport. Actually, this may go into the first point. Is a lot of us, I feel like, have limited vision. A lot of us have limited vision, and oftentimes, whether we're in a good situation or bad situation, or we're in the valleys or the mountaintop, I feel like that a lot of times, because we're in business, because we're in entrepreneurship, we get so focused on one thing. We get so focused on this end goal of making money or growing the business that our limited perspective becomes that prison, right? So just an encouragement that as you're growing your business, just don't forget to remember that having the right perspective is crucial. So just a few tips for you all this morning as you're going throughout your day of how you can keep and gain the right perspective. The one thing which sounds easier said than done is just step back from everything. And I'm not talking physically take a step back, but mentally take some time to take a step back and look at life in the world with a bigger perspective. And whenever I say that, I mean, a lot of times we live in our own little worlds, right? How can I feed myself? How can I take care of myself? How can I make money for my family? We never really tend to step back and look at the bigger picture. And oftentimes as leaders, this is crucial for us to step back and look at the bigger picture, especially when there's problems and struggles that our team or our organization is facing. A lot of times, if we don't step back and we don't look at the bigger picture, we'll never resolve the issues at hand. Or if we do resolve the issues without stepping back, they'll only be band-aids on a bigger problem. So number one, take some time to step back and ask, what is the bigger picture? Take off the blinders and be intentional about just stepping back a bit. The second thing I'll say is there was another quote, and I can't remember who it was from, but there was a quote that says, your perspective is always limited by how much you know. I'll say that again. Your perspective is always limited by how much you know. And sometimes maybe the reason why you don't have a bigger perspective or you haven't had the ability to step back is maybe because you just don't have enough knowledge, right? Enough knowledge of a situation that will allow you to gain that perspective. So that's why it's important, just as entrepreneurs, business owners, leaders, whatever you want to call yourself, that's why it's important to always be seeking for the truth. That's why it's always right to be seeking for knowledge. And then once you find that knowledge, once you find that truth, you're able to step into a new perspective, right? And so, for example, and this may be a horrible example, and I may butcher this. If you guys listen to the show, there's many times when I try to go into stuff and I'm like, that was a lot better in my head than it was coming out of my mouth. But, just talking about knowledge, when you're a kid, right? When you're a kid, there's things you know and you don't know. Just like us right now, even as adults, there's things we know and we don't know. But as a kid, you can really think back to the times when you acted out of ignorance. And ignorance meaning that you simply didn't know, right? It was because maybe, let me say this. Some of you all are parents here, right? And you all are parents, and I'm a parent right now growing up. So there's a lot of things I see my little girl, and maybe this was you when you were growing up as well. Her perspective, she can't see. So for example, if she is running down the driveway, right? We love going on walks down our gravel driveway. If she's running down the gravel driveway, kicking rocks, picking up leaves, playing in the puddles, but she doesn't know that driveways, I mean, maybe she knows, but she's not fully aware that driveways are meant for cars to travel back and forth on, right? Because she doesn't really know that, she's not aware of that, her perspective is limited, right? I know that driveways and, whatever you want to call them, driveways are for transportation pulling back and forth. So I know, and I have the perspective to look and see when cars are coming, but she does not. But if she knew, which her mind's not fully developed yet, but if she knew fully that a driveway was for transportation, for cars going back and forth, trucks going back and forth, she would probably have more perspective to be aware of what's coming a quarter mile down the road, half mile down the road. But because she doesn't, I have to be the one to give her that perspective. And why is because I have that knowledge. So listen, there's some things in life you can't see right now because you don't know where to look. So expand your knowledge, find a mentor, find someone who can actually help point out the flaws, help point out the truths, help point out the things you can't see. And those things may be good or bad. So how can you find somebody that can be the one, and where can you go to find the information you need to gain a better perspective? I know that was a long explanation there. I hope you all got that. But listen, take some time today, think about perspective. Ask yourself, how can I step back and look at the bigger picture? Ask yourself, how can I go out there and find the knowledge I need to gain a wider perspective? How can I go find someone that can help me get a bigger perspective, whether that's in business and life and relationships and money and health? Because oftentimes we don't know what we don't know. So listen, I hope this message brought a new awareness to you. I hope it brought some new perspective into your life. Again, go ahead, share this with a friend, someone who you feel like may need a little bit perspective in their lives, or somebody who just needs a little pick me up this morning. And so listen, remember, we do this every morning. If you're just tuning in, this is your first time listening, we do this Monday through Friday, every morning at 5 a.m. So go ahead, hit the subscribe button. And what that'll do is that will let you know every morning at 5 a.m. You'll get a little notification on your phone. I'm not going to be calling you or texting you, but just get a little notification saying, hey, you got a new motivational message this morning from Michael in the Daily Gems podcast. And we just started bringing on some guests. So I got some really cool visions. I'm going to be bringing on some people with some really cool and inspirational stories that you all will love. So stay tuned for more Daily Gems episodes. And thanks you for listening in. God bless you all. Have a great morning. Let's crush today. Peace.